Hi, and welcome once again to Let's Talk Housing with Steven Haylestrom. That's me. Thank you very much for coming. This is our third episode. You'll be listening to this live, 9 o'clock on 92.7 Trent Radio, 92.7 FM Trent Radio, coming to you from Peterborough. Also, there is a podcast version that is also available, so please download that. Still trying to make sure that it's listed on Apple and all the rest of the places podcasts are available, but it's a happening thing sooner or later. So today we really want to talk a little bit about governments, about housing. It's in the news every day, all the time. It seems like every news program, every discussion seems to have a link somehow to housing and the cost of it and the lack of it and just simply, the challenges around it. So, hence one of the reasons why I wanted to create this show, which brings more of the voices of people and the voice and the solution idea, and maybe a little bit of the frustration in the solutions, because quite honestly that seems to be one of the biggest challenges. Just the other day, my wife, MJ is her name, and she sent me a text which was from Twitter, or X as it is now called. And it was very interesting. She, of course, knows about me and this program and about my, ongoing passion, dispute, whatever you want to call it, around housing. And the fact that, I've worked in the housing world for almost 15 years in the construction part of it, which at some point I will, just tell the audience a little bit more about. But right now, I just wanted to let you know that she sent me a message, like a link to a post that she read in Twitter from a guy to give credit where credit is due. Greg Dempsey is his name, and he put in a post that was from a news group called Blacklocks. That's blacklocks.ca. Unfortunately, the details, you have to join this, and it's not inexpensive to join to get the details. However, the headline is what's important, and the gist of what the emphasis is. So, and really around what I want to emphasize and talk about today around housing. So, interestingly, this post is, I'll read you the post. After 8 years, Canada Mortgage and Housing has built a grand total of, guess how many houses, under the Trudeau plan to convert surplus government property into affordable housing. So it was, didn't even realize it was 8 years ago, during the first term for Trudeau as Prime Minister, that he promised or asserted that he would utilize government surplus land and use it to build housing. This is something that I actually participated in Vancouver, and is now being done in Toronto, where in this case it was municipalities. Every municipality has, owned land that the municipality itself owns, whether it's surplus land, whether it is, it's all sorts of different sorts of property that is available to them or that they have owned by people not paying their taxes, or land that becomes surplus. They think they're going to build something on it, but they don't. Peterborough has lots of this land. In fact, you can go to most municipalities to their websites and you can find a list of all of this property. And then sometimes the municipalities will sell off this land, or they just hold on to it until the price goes up. In many respects, municipalities are land banking. They're holding on to the land for other opportunities, bigger opportunities when they come about. And this in itself is an interesting place for the municipality to be in, because they're gaining somehow. I'm not sure myself. I don't really have a clear idea of what would be better, but but certainly I can describe to you how in 2016 in Vancouver, when Vancouver was dealing initially with quite a severe homeless situation, especially in their east side of Vancouver. And so they instituted a program to build housing on city-owned land in order to help to alleviate this problem. The housing is called transitional housing. It's housing where it's built, and in this case, in Vancouver's case, their plan was to build 600 units of transitional housing on city-owned land. And each of the units, as this program came into effect, each unit turned out to be a small bachelor apartment, initially 320 square feet, then like a tiny home, size of a tiny home. It included a bathroom, kitchen, like a full kitchen, hot plates, kitchen, and then a bedroom, a bed, sitting room in that 320 square feet. And then as the program was built out, they created, designed units like small apartment buildings of anywhere between 30 and 50 units of these types of units, usually 3 stories high, and it included accessible units and all sorts of different sorts of things. And one of the things that they insisted in this program was that they insisted that, as well as the housing space, they wanted to have a community space for the people who lived in the building. So a place where everybody could get together, TV, whatever it was, just sit around and chat. But then also some rooms that were available for counseling, for employment counseling, for addiction counseling, for whatever counseling it might be. And it was a place for people to go and to be able to do that. And then in the end, what happened was these were then turned over to different agencies to operate, and that was part of the deal. And so that agency that would operate this building would in turn then run the programs for the people that were there. And the concept was that these transitional housing the objective was that people would live in the housing for about a year and then move on. And so it was really, at the time in 2016, 2017, it was really quite a bold move for the city of Vancouver. And it was really backed very heavily and pushed very heavily by the mayor at the time. And unfortunately right now I can't remember his name. I met him a couple of times, and names are not my best forte, but I met him a couple of times. And he was the one who really pushed the idea. In fact, pushed it really by first off offering the city land to put the buildings on, and then secondly, pushing the BC government, the provincial government, to then help to fund these projects so that they could go ahead. And at the time, and where I fit into all of this and how I happen to know so much about it is because I was working in British Columbia at the time, and I was in charge of these projects for the company that would then build all of these modular transitional housing projects. These were the first in Canada, and eventually the project was completely built out with 600 units in 10 different locations throughout the city of Vancouver. Now, I think they finished, because I left the company, but I think they finished all of them by around 2019. And although it certainly helped with the housing for homeless people, and the program itself was very good, unfortunately, the homeless problem in Vancouver continued to accelerate, as it has everywhere across the country. And to that end, then Toronto, in fact, one of the lead people in the project for the city of Vancouver ended up transferring or being scooped up by the city of Toronto, and now runs a similar program for the city of Toronto, because the city of Toronto is using those same designs, the designs that I helped develop for those projects are now the same designs that are being used in Toronto. And these projects are going ahead, and they are in many ways being very successful. Although, please keep in mind that this is not housing. It's not housing for what's called the missing middle. The missing middle is all of the people. So you have groups of people who need housing first. The idea in Vancouver was to serve the people that were at the very bottom. So the people who were on the street and who were at the bottom of the housing place. Because at the time, this 2016, 2015 even, when it was conceived, the price of housing was, in some respects, based on where you are, it could have been as much as 90% less than what it is now. And that was only 7 years ago. So the price of housing and rental costs have gone up dramatically in so many different places that it's really almost inconceivable, because we have a tendency not to look back and see what it was. It's like, often or a couple of times, my wife loves to look at the weather, right? And look at, she uses her phone, look at the weather app, and she will look at that weather app and see, well, what's the weather going to be? Okay, well, there's a 30% chance of rain or a 90% chance of rain, so this is going to decide what to wear or what to take with her. Well, what we don't do, and I'd love to see with that, is I would love to see what how that prediction turned out. In other words, it says 90% chance of rain, so how accurate was that prediction? And therefore, how accurate were the predictions for that weather over the last year, for example, so that you get an idea of whether or not how reliable those predictions really are. Because, everyone realizes there's lots of times the weather will say, oh, it's sunny, no problem, everything is good, and away you go, don't take your umbrella, and it pours rain. So, back to what I was talking about, same thing with even the price of housing. It is hard to imagine. There are different studies and different analyses that show the increase in housing. But what they're not what it's really not showing is an overall percentage of what your regular income is, and how much of your regular income is used for that cost of housing. Because if you think about it, even if the cost of housing since 2015 has gone up 50%, I can guarantee you, I don't have to look it up. I can, if someone sends me a message and says, hey, Steven, you're wrong, send me the details. But I don't think that wages have gone up 50% since 2015. Inflation averages about 2.4%. So in that 8 years, that would be 3 times 8 is 24. So we could have a 24% increase in overall costs. But even the minimum wage since 2015 in Ontario has gone up only about 8%. So there's a big disparity between wages and costs, both of everything: eat, drink, drive, cost of gasoline, cost of housing, cost of automobiles, and then the cost of housing has gone up even more. So something is happening. And a little bit later in this program, I'm going to play some more of my interview with my friend Enoch, where he talks a little bit about what his ideas are on what is happening with the economy and the political life, or the life of Canadians, the financial life of Canadians, and it'll give us something to reflect on. But overall, here, the bottom line is we get promises, and this is where I started. And sorry, I do ramble on occasion here. This is where I started. So here it is. Canada, after 8 years, Canada Mortgage and Housing has built a grand total of X number of houses under Justin Trudeau's plan to convert surplus government property into affordable housing. So I was talking about that, made me think about using municipal land, because the federal government promised this. I didn't even realize that they had promised this 8 years ago. And yet in that time, you know how many? 12. They've built 12 houses. 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's it. 12. And out of those, the Department of Fisheries built one. And yet, to quote Justin Trudeau, we are focused on building more houses. I'm not sure where that focus is. I'm not sure. Justin, give me a call. I can give you some solutions. Me and my listeners can agree on solutions. We need houses. We need to fast track the approval process. We need to find creative, innovative ways to do construction. The construction industry as a whole is still building like it's 1965. And why do they do it? Well, to be straight, they do it because they can and because they're making lots of money. So why change? And I think I've said this before, and I'll probably say it again during my time doing this radio program and talking about housing, is that this is one of the biggest challenges, is the lack of innovation and the lack at which we can build houses. I was talking to a business colleague in Sweden, and he was telling me about the modular housing world in Sweden. So in Sweden, if you're wanting to get a new home, just a single family home, right? A single family home, the way that you do it is you go to a catalog, you pick out what you want, you tell them what you want, you put in a deposit, and then the entire house is built in a factory, then delivered to your lot and installed. The whole process, 6 to 8 weeks. Can you imagine that? In Sweden, more than 90% of the houses are built using modular manufacturing, modular construction technology. In Canada, less than 3% of construction is done using modular technology. And the reality is that out of that 3%, very, very few are houses. And again, I am repeating myself, I know, but that's in Ontario. I did a quick survey, and there were, in reality, as far as regular housing, not custom houses, but just regular houses that people go out to buy, there were virtually none that were built using modular technology, compared to Sweden, which is building 90%. They don't have a housing crisis. They are able to keep up because their construction industry is innovative and creative and does things differently. And simple thing is, it's not like this is Mars, this is Sweden. This is these manufacturing techniques are certainly available to be done here. The choice is that the industry is simply not doing it. So, first things first, I wanted to talk about Justin Trudeau. Federal program to build has built only 12 houses on federal government property. Imagine that. So, how has the rest of the governments done? First off, like I said, City of Vancouver, they're working hard at transitional housing. City of Toronto, same thing. Working hard now with transitional housing, but what is missing is the missing middle. And part of my mandate in this program is to talk about how to find housing, things to find in housing. What can we do with the housing? How can people who are in the middle, they're working, they have a job, you have a regular job, you're making decent money. Let's say it's not a minimum wage job. It's a, medium, the middle class. How do those people, what options do they have to get housing? So, as I said, transitional housing is for people who are in the very bottom, on the street, and they want to get up one level. The next level is the people who have gotten off the street and just want to move into a small, inexpensive, easy to maintain apartment. Normally it'd be a rental apartment, of course, that they would use. And then, after a little while in that, they might then, get into a relationship, create a family, and then want to move into a home of their own, whether it's a condominium home or a single family home, move to the suburbs, move out to the country, move to Peterborough, wherever it is, but that's the next transition. And then you have another huge group of people, which is that group of students. These are people who have transitioned from being at home, and they want to go and get an education away from home. So they're a student, and this is a student whose family is in Canada, and they want to, so for example, if you're living in Peterborough and you want to go to school in Toronto or in Ottawa or in Vancouver, and when you go there, you need to find housing. Depending on the university, they may or may not have student housing, and they may have student housing only for the first year. as they do. One of my daughters went to Laurier, and student housing was only available for the first year. My youngest daughter, who is hoping to go to university next year, she is going to go to Toronto, and she wants to go to OCAD, and OCAD has no student housing. So you're on your own. So students with families that are in Canada, and then they need to find housing. Then you have another group of another first group, which is immigrants to Canada. So they immigrate to Canada. They have passed all of the tests, everything they need to come to Canada. They come here, and then they struggle to find housing. Canada is encouraging immigration because we need our population growth. Our natural population growth is near zero, and in order to survive, we really need to continue to grow our population. And really, the only way to do that now is through immigration. So our federal government is making things easier in some respects for people to immigrate to Canada. But what they don't do is they say, okay, we're going to bring a whole bunch of new 100,000, 200, 300,000 more people to Canada, but we're going to only produce 12 new houses on federal land. We're not going to offer people anything to live in. We're not going to help them find a home other than through some sort of agency that might do that. So, with that said, that is the regular immigrant situation. The next one are the students. So, Canadian universities and colleges, typically underfunded and reduced funding over the years, and they have had reduced funding. And so, as a way to bring their funding up, to bring in money to pay for their programs, they have, for a number of years now, emphasized and pushed the idea of foreign students, because they see this as a real direct cash money infusion into the university. They see this as a way to really bring money directly into their schools. They know their classes are already paid for. They have the regular students that are there. So adding in foreign students is indeed a great way to bring cash into a university or a college. To this end, what they do is promote it, and promote it a lot, so that universities and colleges, the one like Trent, like Fleming, like all of the ones in Peterborough, as well as universities and colleges across the country, are promoting the idea more and more to have foreign students. They pay high price to come and study in Canada because Canada provides a top-notch education, one of the best in the world, and and it's a good way for them then to transition or move towards towards Canadian citizenship, and a way to be able to establish themselves outside of their existing country. There are many places in the world that look at Canada as the place to go, or that's the way they have looked at it. And I know from talking to my friends, I have a great number of connections into the immigrant world, and things are starting to change. People are feeling Canada is no longer affordable. it's no longer the place that it used to be, because of simply because of the cost of living and the inability to succeed. It's difficult. People are challenged. Now, I just want to get back to what I started out talking about, which is, first off, the what governments are doing and what they have actually done. And so, first off, the federal government, they promised 8 years ago, 8 years ago to build. We're committed to building, we're focused on building more houses, yet they don't give up the land. And it's a real opportunity that for some reason does not happen. It just seems to be the typical thing to do. Tell people what you're going to do, tell them that you're going to do this, tell them that you're going to give them this, tell them that this is where their money's going, and this is why they are so fantastic, then not do anything. And they leave it, the federal government at the top seems to then leave it to the governments further down the line to actually do anything. Where when it comes to housing, the pressure right now is mostly on the municipalities, and a lot of the blame is being pushed onto the municipalities for the amount of time that it takes to process applications for building permits to allow buildings to be met. And I can tell you from my life in the housing world, it takes a very, very long time to get, much longer than it needs to be. In California, for example, same population as Canada, all of California, the turnover time is 6 to 8 weeks for a complete site and building permit. In Canada right now, I don't know what the average is for the entire country, but in Toronto, 3 to 5 years. In Peterborough, 1 to 2 years. In Trent Hills, where I live, 6 to 10 months in a municipality of 13,000 people. And nobody seems to know why it takes so long, what it is about the process that takes that long, or why it all happens. And this is what creates all of the challenges, so that the developers then say, well, it costs us so much, we have to pay so much in fees, and we have to do jumping over so many hoops just to produce housing. So you want to produce housing, and then it costs you more and more money. The provincial government, if we talk about the provincial government, again, the provincial government, interestingly, they are now, as of last November, they have put pressure on the municipalities to speed up their process. And yet they're just saying to the municipalities, okay, speed up your process. But they actually have developed a high-speed permitting process, which they use and utilize for their own projects, but have not instituted it for regular housing projects. And I know this because I know in my world, in the housing world, and in the construction world, I know companies that have been awarded large contracts with the provincial government, and then they get fast-tracked to permitting because it's for something that the provincial government wants. So the provincial government will force the municipalities or legislate them to do things faster when it's to their best interest. Which, okay, fair enough. But it's to all of our best interest to have housing sped up and done faster now. That's what needs to be done. And we really can't wait any longer. Everything needs to be sped up. The processes need to be sped up. The construction needs to be sped up. Innovation, it's there. The people are here. The ability to do it is here. The governments and the construction industry have to start working together to institute and create solutions that will solve our problems, the people, our problems, with not being able to do that. And that will in turn, if the supply of housing is increased, that in turn will then level off or decrease the price of housing so that people can then start to afford again. Interesting again, because of my inside knowledge of the housing market, I can tell you that, if the price of housing has increased in the Peterborough County region by, say, call it, just to be fair, 25% over the last 2 years, then I can tell you that the cost of construction, of materials and people and labor has not gone up 25%. In fact, it may have gone up 5%. Now, there was a period of time during the pandemic when the price of wood, which, I'm not wild about wood as a construction material anyway. It's just like you might as well be using bamboo and whatever forest materials. But anyway, all of that aside, the price of wood did skyrocket a little bit. Did certainly increase in price during the pandemic, but that price has all gone down. Has that price been reduced to everybody? To some extent, but certainly there is still, the prices still remain higher than what they were pre-pandemic, interestingly, and the profit that is being taken for those products is increased. But now the price for materials, for drywall, for wood, for trusses, for tiles, for plumbing, for electrical, there are some prices certainly that have gone up, but there are many that have now leveled back down, stayed the same, or are just have increased in a small amount. Certainly not the amount that housing prices continue to rise. New housing prices I'm talking about, where the new houses are taking on the prices of what the other things are, other houses are, and that seems to be in direct contravention to what the real costs are. So, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, somebody's making a lot more money. So, what does that mean? Well, it means, I don't know. I don't know what it means. I don't know what can be done about it, but it is one of the reasons why we like to talk about housing, because this is a problem. Now, so we've talked about federal government, provincial government, municipal government. We've talked about the construction industry. So all of those things. We've talked about the problem with, not the problem. The problem is having housing for immigrants to Canada. We need immigration to Canada. It's vitally important to our survival. So in order to encourage people to immigrate to Canada, we have to have a vibrant, working, reasonably priced housing market. Second is student housing. We have to allow, if we want an educated, well-educated society, which we do, every study ever done says that if the people in the society are well educated, then the society itself works better. So, we need student housing. We need then student housing specifically for immigrant foreign students to Canada, so that we need housing for those people. And we need housing for the missing middle. That is the people who are regular workers. They have a regular job. They're in the coffee shop. They're at Canadian Tire. They're at wherever you go, like all of the retail workers, all of the people in the automotive business, the guy who fixes your car, all of the people who are not making, $150,000 or $200,000 a year as an engineer or a lawyer or whatever it is, but the regular people who make day-to-day life work for us, they need to have a place to live. And if they are utilizing 50, 60, 70% of their wages to pay for their place, a roof over their head, then all that will do is eliminate the middle class and just will have very poor and the very rich. And the majority of people will be in the very poor. And that is a problem for sure. Okay, what I'd really like to do now is I want to bring my friend Enoch back again from the previous episode. You might remember Enoch from episode number 1, and he's talking about he is a professor for university in Vancouver. He lives in Toronto, and he also works for the Ontario government. So, really all well-rounded. Plus, he's really quite a social action guy and very interested in housing and the challenges around it and the cost and what it does and the effect it has on people. But anyway, here he is, a little bit more of my conversation with Enoch.
How do you kind of implement, because is it that the government guarantees, part of it is that as citizens in Canada, we all have to be taxed enough so that the government can provide housing for everybody? Is that what we agree?
Yeah, I think that this goes back to the education part. Is that we used to see housing as a human right many decades ago, but we started to see housing as a commodity. We start to see. Right, we start to call a house a property, right? And these terms are problematic because it frames a home, a house, for instance, as something to be taken advantage of. Hey, I've got this piece of property, so I want to make money out of it because it's a property, right? It's a commodity, right? So there should be other ways that we should frame a house. I don't know how we could frame it, because it goes back to the messaging that we always perpetuate, that we always get in the real estate. Again, the term market is another term that we often use, the real estate market. So we see houses as commodity rather than a place that people need to live in.
That's just such a wonderful point is because, and I was thinking, as you said, decades ago, and it really wasn't that long ago, even if you look into the 70s, where where there was more social housing, where people would save up to have a home. People weren't flipping their houses for money. They weren't, or not very often, not very many people. Yep. And they weren't. They were trying to save up so that they could, that their children would leave home, get a job, and be able to buy a home, and then they'd build more homes for those people, not to just go and buy a home or bank land or buy land for whatever. Yeah, and it's such a good point. Yeah.
The way that we and besides community psychology, I also teach advocacy strategy and tactics. And in that course, I teach about how we frame messages, how we tell stories, how stories impact our understanding, and the way that we frame messages is going to impact the way we understand things. So that's why I hone in on the terms like property, markets, right? These are the capitalistic terms that we use. So people constantly see houses as a business venture, as an investment, right? That's another term that we often use, is investment. So these things impact our understanding and subsequently impact our behavior.
Right. Yes. Yeah. That's very insightful. Okay. I got to get to work. Otherwise, I would spend the whole morning talking to you.
I have to go as well.
I find it really good. Yes. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I'll send you that off as soon as I can, and I hope we can talk again soon.
Sounds good. Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to that. Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Great. Take care. Bye for now.
Hi, and welcome back to Live. I wanted to, for a moment, talk about rental costs and where they come from and how it's going. And just how is it going overall for people? Like, and I know I have covered some of this just earlier this hour, but just recently in September, just earlier last month, the rentals.ca did a new report on the cost of renting across Canada. And across Canada, monthly rentals went up 1.8% monthly and 9.6% annually to reach another record high of $2,117 as an average rent. The annual rate of inflation for asking rents was lower than the 12% increase recorded a year ago in August 2022. It represents a 4-month high. So to give you an idea of what that means, and some of the year-over-year costs. So, of course, number one is Vancouver. And this is for a 1-bedroom apartment. Okay? First off, a year-over-year increase is 13.1% for a 2-bedroom, and the average cost for a 1-bedroom in Vancouver, $2,988. That's a year-over-year increase of 13.1%. And a 2-bedroom is $3,879. That's a 9.5% year-over-year increase. Burnaby, for a 2-bedroom, has a 23.5% year-over-year increase. Brampton, and I work a fair bit in Brampton, driving back and forth from the megalopolis of Warkworth, Ontario. There, a 1-bedroom has gone up year-over-year 29%. That's $2,274 on average. A 29% year-over-year increase. And for a 2-bedroom, it's around $2,650, which is a 25.7% increase. Like, it's just unbelievable. And Brampton and this rating is by the cost, and not by the year-over-year increase, because it's amazing how these have changed. And the real question is, why are they changing to this extent? Right? Now, I'm looking in here, and Peterborough is not listed, so unfortunately I can't give you an idea of those changes. But I can give you some other things, like in Hamilton, again, the year-over-year for a 1-bedroom is up 12%, and a 2-bedroom is up 6%. Barrie, Ontario, a 1-bedroom's up 11%, and a 2-bedroom up 4%. And if I'm looking down the list here in front of me, the only place it's gone down is Kelowna. Not sure why. Kelowna, British Columbia. And in Kingston, Ontario, for a 2-bedroom's gone down by almost 12%, but a 1-bedroom went up by 17%. So overall, the cost just can't stop, doesn't seem to want to stop going up, and gives you an average of a 1-bedroom up 1.3, year-over-year, is this year-over-year? No, year-over-year increase on average of about 8.87%. on a 1-bedroom, and on a 2-bedroom up by 8.73%. The most expensive 1-bedroom is in Vancouver, and the least expensive, if I can look down this quickly, is going to be Edmonton. And Lethbridge. Well, and Regina, Saskatchewan, or Saskatoon. So Saskatchewan seems to be the least cost for rent. Although both those places, the 1 and 2 bedroom, have increased. In Regina, 8% on both of them, and in Saskatoon, 5% for the 1 bedroom and 6% for the 2 bedroom. But a 1 bedroom you can get for $1,055, compared to Vancouver, $3,000, $2,988. Like, wow, the differential is just hard to believe and hard to understand where that comes from. And, one of the things that is important is to look at the average asking price for rentals as well, and the annual change in average prices. Now, with all of that said, and talking about rental, and I started out the conversation today talking about where governments are coming from. And here it is again. The Ontario government, 1.5 million houses, 1.5 million units in 10 years. And that's what they say is necessary, 150,000 per year. Now, so 10 years from the end of 2022 would be 2032. Yet, virtually around the same time, here it was, this is in September, I'm sorry, not the same time, almost a year later, Trudeau, head of our federal government, is telling us the CMHC forecast is saying that the country needs new housing for 2023, is that the country requires about 5.8 million new homes needed by the year 2030. So just 7 years away. And the CMHC is showing that the growth of the actual housing units being built compared to what is needed will have a shortfall. In the initial forecast in 2022 showed a shortfall of 3.52 million homes. 3.52 million homes. Imagine all those people on the street, man. Like, wow. Now they did a 2023 update recently. That's what Trudeau was talking about. And geez, the gap has been made a little bit smaller. The gap has been made smaller. So aren't we all happy? It's now only 3.45 million homes short. And the supply picture has improved somewhat in Ontario, but has worsened in other provinces like Quebec, Alberta, British Columbia. The CMHC says Ontario still makes up the bulk of the shortfall with a 1.48 million gap. So, kudos to Doug Ford for announcing we need 1.5 million by 2033, but by 2030, according to the CMHC, which is the place that keeps track of all of the housing across Canada, including Ontario, shows that we're going to still be short 1.48 million, even with all of that, everything that the construction industry can do, and everything else, and we'll still be short that many houses. So here I am, continuing to talk about all of the problems and everything that is wrong, and how over and over again things are just not working out. And the problem is, how can we solve it? Like, how can things change? See, in most provinces, CMHC considered housing to be affordable if it takes up about 30% of income. but that target is 37% in Ontario and 44% in British Columbia because of the inequity in the housing availability. So even the CMHC sees that this is not possible. So all of that said, everything said today, hearing from my friend Enoch and all of the rest of it, I realize that in this program I'm not spending a lot of time talking about solutions, but really there are solutions. I can tell you about them. I'm in the industry that can, and I touched on it briefly talking about Sweden earlier, the industry, the manufacturing industry that can be created to house and make the housing that is necessary in Canada and be able to build it and produce jobs and do it environmentally in an environmentally friendly way and a sustainable way and an energy efficient way and all of those things. And really what it takes is both investment. I mean, geez, the government is willing to invest multi-million dollars in new technology for car batteries, but to get them to invest in new technology for housing, they don't even know where to begin. And yet the technologies are available and can be done. I can tell you there are technologies where you could build 20,000 new homes in a matter of 6 months. And I am not making that up. That's quite possible. But it doesn't involve a guy with a truck bringing a pile of wood and then getting somebody else to pour some concrete. That's not what it takes. And at the same time, you won't end up with a house that looks like a Soviet-style apartment block from the 1970s. So that innovation is available, and starting in our next episode, I'm going to start talking about some of those innovative things, particularly for student housing, for affordable housing, and how you can come and how it can happen, and it can really happen properly, and what's necessary to make that happen. So I am still looking for people to interview. I would really like if I got some phone calls or interest from somewhere, and that would be great. And I want to again thank 97.2 Trent Radio FM in Peterborough for hosting this program, and I'm really looking forward to continue with it and to start to really bring solutions to the market and bringing ideas for people to talk about. And I'd really like to also do a public forum in Peterborough, which I'd really like your help with, everyone, to have like an auditorium full of people just to talk about housing solutions. Really, really appreciate it, and thank you very much, everybody. This is Steven Haylestrom. Let's talk housing, and I will talk to you all next week. Thank you very much for attending, and appreciate your time and effort for being here. Please be good. I don't know. I don't have a good sign-off yet. I guess I got to think of something. Something else I need help with. Okay. Take care, everyone, and be good. Bye for now.